Now for more, we welcome Advocate Vered Windman, Executive Director of the Israel National Council for the Child, joining us from Jerusalem. Vered, thank you so much for your time. We've been talking here in studio how it's nearly 5 months and still it's difficult to process the magnitude of what happened on the 7th of October and the impact on so many young lives, as we saw in that report. But I understand the Israel National Council for the Child has details on the number of children murdered on the 7th of October and the number abducted. It's simply heartbreaking. What more can you tell us?
Absolutely heartbreaking. And I should say, first of all, the Israel National Council for the Child is an NGO. We have been collecting every year statistical data, and this year we had a big challenge to gather data of the first month of the war. And during the first month of the war, it was evident that the state did not meet the challenge of protecting the children of Israel. And it should be said loudly and clearly that the negative trends of years in poverty and mental health and welfare didn't begin on October 7th. But when an emergency situation confronts systems and public workforce that have been starved for years and a safety net full of holes, the results are unfortunately known in advance. And I can give you two of many examples. One of them is the lack of educational psychologist positions, and the second is school physical protection. And when I say physical protection, I mean schools that either did not have enough shelters or safe rooms. And on the eve of October 7th, almost 30% of the country's educational psychologist positions were unfilled. And in Israel's southern district, the situation was even more grave, with 36% of these positions left unfilled. And the second war-related statistic indicate that the school system was unprepared. As I said, they didn't have enough shelters or safe rooms. On the eve of October 7th, 26% of the schools were not properly physically protected, and 15% were totally unprotected. And in the northern and southern district, 20% of education institutions were not properly protected. And in the Bedouin schools in the Negev, we can say that 21% were completely unprotected. The thing is that the professional experience also teaches us that the difficult statistics from the beginning of any war and this war are probably only the beginning of a disastrous picture that will not become clear further down the road or at the end of the crisis that is now gripping us. But you asked about the results and the consequences of the war.
Right.
Given the gloomy likelihood of what is expected in the future, we should really look at some of the current statistics of the war. And one of the most striking data that we have been able to collect is that Israel has recognized almost 20,000 children as victims of terrorism since October 7th.
That's a staggering number. That is a staggering number.
And almost 8,000 of whom are under the age of 6. And this is according to the National Insurance Institute. And these are children who were injured either physically or emotionally. And of course, according to the report, 38 children in Israel were murdered during the war. 3 of them between infancy to 3, and 4 of them aged between 3 and 6. This is really hard to grasp. And the massacre left 20 children orphaned and another 96 with only one parent.
Vered, it's actually difficult to even listen to these numbers that you are giving out. It hurts in the core of any human being's heart to hear this. One doesn't even begin to process how those trauma specialists that you alluded to earlier would have to help these young children, these survivors, some of whom have seen their parents killed, some of whom were there to witness the atrocities unfolding, some of the details still unfolding. Every single day we're hearing more and more about the atrocities. But when you talk about children affected by this war right now, you cannot help but think immediately of Kfir and Ariel Bibas. Of course, baby Kfir turning 1 in Gaza, held by terrorists, his 4-year-old brother Ariel and mom Shiri, and of course Yarden, their dad, also in captivity. At this moment, while talks are underway in Cairo about an apparent hostage deal, their fate remains unknown, as is the case with all the hostages. How does the nation deal, children deal? How do we even begin to try and make sense of the trauma that you are detailing in that report?
So first of all, when we handed the statistical yearbook, the first thing that I said in my speech was about Kfir and Ariel Bibas. Every chance that we have as an NGO that deals with children's rights every day of the year, either when I go to the parliament meetings and in the Knesset, when I go to rallies in front of international organization, I call on the international community and of course of our government to do everything that in its power,
right,
to make the Hamas release those toddlers, those babies. This is an atrocious crimes. And this is, and it's really, I think, even for the most resilient, hard to imagine what they're going through in the dark tunnels of Gaza Strip.